I'm going to build this authentication system that I've been kind of working on in Express.js, which is the library or framework for Node for web apps, and it's kind of cool. It's not bad. I think I mentioned in the last recording that it seems like maybe you're doing a little bit more code than we would if we were doing it in PHP, but then again, the PHP isn't working at all. And this is actually more than just connecting to the database. This is doing a routing system and managing templating and managing variables and so on and so forth. So there's more to it than just the database connection, and I'm kind of happy with it so far. Anyway, so I'm showing you this. This is not Express. This is not Node right here. I'm starting with, let me make sure actually. Yeah, I'm doing the whole display. Okay, cool. So I fully expect I may get into trouble partway through this. I don't know exactly where, but this stuff is new to me, some of it at least. So I'm making some changes right here as I look at this. This is our templating engine, which is Pug. You see these file names have a PUG extension. A slightly older version of this, which I've seen before, was called Jade. I hadn't used Pug before, but it's basically the same thing, and they're both based off of Haml, which is an HTML templating engine. So you might look at this, and I think it's pretty immediately apparent. Think, if you know HTML, like what you're seeing here, like, oh yeah, this is going to render as the doc type declaration. Here's your HTML element, and I'm not done with this one either. Anyway, yeah, and so as you know, in HTML, white space is not counted very strictly. In this templating system, white space is counted very strictly. The fact that the head is indented into HTML means that it is a child of HTML. It's nested inside HTML just like body, and the meta title and these two links are nested inside head. It's got to be that way. If you start skipping indent levels and so on, then it's just no good. It all falls apart. And then like attributes, you put in parentheses instead of just putting spaces between and that sort of thing. And so like, why in the world would you want to do this? I mean, you've done HTML before. You know HTML is easy as pie, right? You could just kind of slap the whole thing together. Why in the world would you need one of these templating systems? Well, it's more than just rendering straight HTML. You can do includes or include like things, and you can do variable renders and things like that. So for instance, check the very next one here. I've got home.pug, which we created for the home page, which is not going to be the landing page, I don't think, of your app. And take a look at this. Extends layout.pug. That just means all this stuff is to be considered, well, everything from body on up is to be considered like an include, like a PHP include that gets rendered out on this page and on the login. And then where it says block content, notice it's pulling that from the block content here. So this is kind of like a variable name, and then you're telling it what the value of the variable is here. There's something else that's going on, and that is, notice the equals sign here. And whenever you see something like that, you're not supposed to put a space before the equals. You can put one afterward if you want to, but whenever it sees this, it's assuming that message is a variable that's been passed in from somewhere or another. And I guess it can be defined right here in the Pug file too. I haven't done that yet, or I've done it with Haml years and years ago. But yeah, you can declare variables right here in the document. You can do conditionals, you can do loops, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of fun that way. Anyway, I've just got h1 equals message here at the top of home. At the top of login, I've got h2 equals message. So depending on which page is getting rendered with Express, it's going to have a different value for the variable message. So anyway, Pug is one of the recommended templating systems for Express, which is why I'm using it here. So anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at, let's see, I've got these inside this views folder, which we're going to be using, but for now, I'm just going to go ahead and open up this MTG folder that I just made, and let's go ahead and open up the terminal here. And first I want to check and make sure that I've got Node version. I always like to check and make sure everything's working before I start running into unbeknownst errors. And Node Package Manager version, that one always takes a second longer, but wow, that's really taken a while. There we go, 8.5.5. Took a while to crank that one out. So I'll just start off the way I did the last recording. I'm going to do the npm init here. for initialize, and I think that I'm just going to be able to dive right through this whole thing. So before, I can't remember if I changed index.js to app.js. I'm just going to do index.js. I think that's a good name for a landing file. And the rest of the stuff just entering right on through. And yes. Okay, cool. And that creates a package.json file, which is, you can set certain parameters and defaults in here. And then instead of doing like node and then the file name to start the server, you can do npm run and then, yeah, but there's a couple of different ways to do it, but I don't expect us to need to do that at all. What I am going to do is I'm going to install some things here. Like we did before, I'm going to do npm install and express. And I can't remember what else we did in the last recording. That was a couple of days ago, I think. So npm install express, and then let it go through its deal there. It's going a bit slower than my other machine. And I'm going to do a few more of these. npm install and then express dash session. So this is going to enable something like sessions in PHP, or local storage, or session storage rather, in JavaScript. And then see, and then what else do we need to do? Let's see. Oh yeah, npm install MySQL. This is what's going to let us connect to the database. So basically, when you set up a new folder and a new project, you have to install this stuff. I guess there's a way to do it globally. If you're just sure you're always going to be using Express for all of your projects, or for most of them, then you can do it globally. But I'm not going to get into that right now. Okay, so let's see. We do express session, MySQL. Let's do pug too. So npm install pug. And that will get the project initialized. So we'll have a few other things in here, the node modules, the locked JSON file. Let me go ahead and take out my mtg views folder, copy it, and paste that in here as well. And I'm just going to rename it just to views. So remember when we did the MVC architecture PHP class, we had views, models, and controls. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do, well, I'll do views and then I'll just do scripts. So simplify it down just a little bit here. Okay, and the scripts will all go into there. The views contain the more, I want to call them static files, but they're not quite, because they do have those variables and templating and so on, the CSS. And if you have like just like little scripts that you wanted to throw into these pages, like focusing on a form element or something, you could throw it inside a JS subfolder here as well. It's not part of the big business logic of this thing. But all the scripts can go in there except for index.js, which is going to go out here in the root folder. Let's go ahead and make one. So I'm going to close these guys and open a folder. MTG. And let's create our, so I mean, this is what's so cool about it, is that you can write server-side stuff with JavaScript. So if you already know JavaScript well, which I think you do, then it's kind of a piece of cake. Let's see, I'm going to call this index.js. I like to put comments up at the top of the file. Just helps me to visualize exactly which file I'm looking at. Making sure it's saved to MTG, and we'll call it index.js, and save. So let's get some of the stuff in here. First of all, we need to call in the modules that we're going to be using, and then storing them as constants. So the modules Node uses require for this. It's from common.js or common.js, which is a way of doing JavaScript modules before native JavaScript modules came along. We can call in our own modules too, and we're going to, and they just look a little bit different. But let's go ahead and do some of these. So I'll do const for constant express equals, and it's not just enough to have express installed in the folder. We need to actually call it into our landing page here, which is our index. So we'll do require and express. And that's all you need. You don't need to do .js or tell it a subfolder to look into it, just the module name, and that's it. When it comes to our own modules, we'll have to be a little bit more specific. We'll have like a / in the beginning of them just to indicate the file, the folder structure that we're looking at. But for these, we don't really need it. Should put these all together. Okay, so next up, we'll do const session equals require express session. You'll recall us bringing in that one and installing it. We'll do const path is one we did not need to install, but we do need the module, or at least it makes things easier. And we'll start out with this. I'm not going to bring in MySQL on this one because we're going to have a separate connect.js file, and we'll bring in we'll require the MySQL module in there. So let me go ahead and just put comment to separate these, and we'll do our const app equals express, like so, and const port equals 3000, just like before. I'm going to be a little sloppier with my semicolons here, so I don't like forget to use them half of the time and kind of wind up with some really inconsistent looking code. There's some other things that we've got to put in here. We've got to tell it what we're going to be using of this stuff, and we're also going to set the view engine to Pug, and then we will do our listen script. So let's go ahead and get these in. I'm going to do app.use, some of the stuff like I just learned. So I'm a little hesitant, that's why. But this one has certain things that all of the tutorials I could see just did the same thing. So secret, this is like, oh shoot, hang on a second, this is not right. All right, app.use session. There we go, that might help. Okay, so this is stuff to do with the session storage, and this is just like an extra hash that we put on top of, you know, the whole thing to add a little bit extra layer of security. So, I mean, it's supposed to be something hashy, right? Something that's a little bit difficult for people to guess, but I'm just going to put in something like this. Okay. And then all the tutorials that I saw did a resave true, and I always spell this one, but save uninitiated, or uninitialized rather. Made that mistake several times. And that one also gets a true. app.use express.json. And app.use express URL encoded. To help with the routing. And we'll do extended true. Okay, so I don't have very specific answers about exactly what all that stuff is doing yet. I plan to find out more, but for now, again, just copying tutorials. Let's see, what else do we need? We need to set the static views and set the view engine here. So let's do app.use again, express.static. And so what this is doing, it's saying, okay, so if you have static files that you're going to be delivering, and you're looking for URLs in there, so not part of the routing system, in other words, you tell it what folder to look into. And we've got a folder called views. I did save it as views, right? Yes, there it is. So static files are going to be found in the views folder, and then we do app.set. This is the last one of these. View engine and Pug is the templating system that we're using. So once we've got that in there, then it will know, okay, so it's going to take those templates and render them as HTML and also plug in whatever variables are required. So this just kind of gets the whole thing initialized, and I think this will do it. And let's go ahead and do our app.listen. And let's see, Let me just double check something here. I want to make sure I don't mess up anything. Yeah. So we've specified port as 3000 as a constant, so that's not going to change. So we put port, and then we put a callback here. And I already like this thing, the console.log thing, where it'll log, instead of logging to the actual console in the browser, it logs it to the console, like the actual, like the bash shell. Port. And so you can, I mean, you could put this console.log anywhere, but I think it's convenient to put it inside the listening callback here. And let's go ahead and try our first running of the server here. So I'm going, actually I've already got this open here. So let's go ahead and just, I'm going to double check and make sure I've got the index.js. There it is. I'm just going to do node.index.js, not dot, but node.index.js. And missing in parentheses, so I've made a mistake already. And I guess I'm not too surprised by that. Let's see if it tells me what. No, it's not telling me what line it is. Oh yeah, it is 14. Ah, yes, opening up two parentheses. I think you remember that's a big error of mine. Let's try that again. Okay, cool. And there's this thing. There's the comment that we just wrote in. So let's go open up the browser here. And I'm going to go to localhost 3000. And I don't think I've tried 3000 on this particular browser on this machine. So let's try it. Okay, it says it cannot get /. And that's because we haven't put it in yet. But we got the server running, which we saw here. If it gives you that console.log, then you know that the browser's running. So let me stop this with a Control-C. And let's go ahead and get a very simple something or other in here. .get. These are going to be our routes here. And I will do app.get /, which is our home. And what we're going to do is we'll render out, I'm just checking my notes here. We're going to render out the login script. So let's go ahead and try that. I'm just triple checking and making sure we've got it inside views here. And yeah, it's the login. I'm not going to use home. I'm actually going to use login first. And then if login is passed with flying colors, then the user gets to get to the home page from there. That's my evil plan anyway. Okay, so again, double checking my notes to make sure I'm not missing anything big here. Okay, and yeah, okay. So for the second parameter, we'll do a function, and you'll see the same pattern over and over again. By the way, you could totally do an arrow function if you wanted to. Request and response. These are just past variables. You can name them anything that you want to. And we'll do a response.render login. Okay. And I'm going to pause this for a second because I'm confusing myself. I want to make sure that I've got everything ready to go here. Hang on just a moment. Okay, cool. I get confused between file names. We're going to have two different things called login. We've got a login.js in just a moment, but right now we've got a login.pug. And let's just go ahead and try this and see if it brings in that pug HTML file or HTML templating file. So I'll just hit the up arrow and run node again. And refresh here. Cannot read properties of undefined reading app. It's trying to. And it's looking for all right, hang on just another moment here. I'll get this figured out. Okay, I think I got it. It's just a typo. Response. Okay, that should do it, I believe. Yeah, because, okay. So yeah, because VS Code gives you a different color coding for a variable that's been, defined, but it's not been called. So I think that was the only issue here. So let me go ahead and save that, and I'll go back over here and Control CS out of that, and start up the server one more time, and refresh. And there we go. Okay, so we've got something happening here, which is awesome. So this is the HTML that's being rendered from that HTML templating. The CSS I pretty much stole from one of the tutorials that I found. I just modified it a little bit as I modified the markup a little bit. But yeah, it's basically... So the CSS is, if you haven't done forms like this, the CSS is probably worth looking at. I think I did a demo in that in the front-end web programming class about how to do like labels and forms like this, and it's not rendering quite the way I want it to, but that's okay. I'll fix it later on. Okay, so next thing I want to do is put the message up here. If you recall from, well, yeah, that pug file at the top of that form on the form.pug, it had h2 equals message. So it's expecting to receive a value for a variable there, and I don't have one. So it's not outputting anything. So let's go ahead and give this render function a second parameter. And this is where you can define variables. For instance, message, which is the variable that the file is expecting. And then let's call this mtg trader. So the servers are kind of finicky this way. Just hitting the refresh button doesn't always do it. Sometimes even holding shift refresh does not do it. That's supposed to be a forced refresh, but there's something about running things on localhost that it just doesn't always quite work. So sometimes you have to go in and stop the server and then start it back up again. Now there's a module for Express or Node, one of the two, that will continually refresh the browser every time one of your file changes. Like it'll listen for any changes in your files, do a diff, and then if it finds one, it'll refresh the browser page for you. I haven't gotten around to trying that yet, but I've got a page bookmarked, so at some point I will try it. And there we go. So I just refreshed over here after restarting the server, and there's the variable that we just did. It's being spat out there. Okay, so the whole point of this is to do the login script, so let's go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to create a new file here, and this is also going to be JavaScript. And this is going to be our login.js. I've also got a script handy for a register.js, but I don't think we'll really have time for that tonight because this is going a bit slower than I had planned. Make sure I'm in the right folder. I'm going to put this inside the scripts folder now. I want all my other scripts tucked safely away here. And I'm also going to create another new file. And this one is going to be called connect.js. These are both going to be JavaScript modules. So they're going to be called into our index, and one of them is actually, this is going to be called into login in the same way that we called in those native modules. Go ahead and save this. Also into scripts, and let's go ahead and do this guy first. So remember we installed MySQL, but we didn't actually call it in terms of like requiring the module in our index.js. We left it out of this up here. That's because we're going to need it in the connect.js. So same pattern, we'll do const and then MySQL equals require MySQL, like so. And then from this, we're going to want to export from here. And that means that we'll use something called module.exports. equals, and then you can take all the stuff that you want to export and put it into an object literal here. And so I'm going to do two connections here. We're going to connect to cards and, or rather to MTG, and then we're going to connect to Trader as well. So I'll do a cards connect. And this is going to be mysql.createConnection. And here we define what the host is, localhost. And then the user, which is, this is the database user that we set up, which is app admin for me. So app admin. Okay, the password for app admin, which I think my secret password is my horrible password. And then what database that we want. So the cards come from MTG. So this is going to be our Cards Connect, and ultimately we're also going to want Trader Connect. In fact, Trader Connect is the one we're going to use first in order to get the login, the authentication done. So let's go ahead and make another one here. Thought I copied that, I guess not. There we go. This one's going to be Trader Connect. And this is going to be all the same thing, except of course the database is different. We've got two databases, that's why we need the two connections. And this is going to be Trader. And then, so the login.js is going to require this script in the same way that this one requires that native module here from Node that we installed. So let's go ahead and do the same thing here. This is being exported so that we can require it or import it somewhere else. And let's do const connect equal. So this looks just the same as this guy here, right? Const MySQL is required MySQL, and then const connect equals required connect, which is this guy here. It's just that when we've got our own files to do, it's in the same folder, then you want to indicate the directory structure. So you do a // there. Otherwise, this thing's going to crash. So let's go ahead and do, this one's also going to have something exported from it. So we'll do module.exports equals, and put this into an object. This time it's just going to be the one function. So I'll just do authenticate and request response. So this may look like this guy right here, request and response, and it is. It's kind of the point of it. You see this pattern all over the place, and look at that. I tried to misspell it again. Response. And then the body here. So this is, I'm just going to go ahead and write the script and then go ahead and put a stop to the recording because before trying it, I still have to pop over to the database, I just realized, and just check and see, like, yeah, did I set up my table right? You know, do I have actually a user there to test this? But anyway, you can go ahead and try it on your end. And then the next recording that I do, which maybe tomorrow night, Monday morning, something like that, I'll actually test this against the database and also do that that register script. So let's go ahead and do let UN for username equal request, so it's pulling from here, .body.username. And so what this is pulling from, this is, let me go ahead and open up the login.pug file at the same time here. This is under views. And it has no idea what to open it with. It's funny, on the Mac, like, it knew exactly, Visual Studio Code knew what a pug file was, but I guess in Windows it doesn't here. So here is the login.pug, which would be the login.html, basically. And what was I just saying? Okay, so the request.body.username, this guy right here is going to grab the names of these inputs and then do something with them. And then, so this form is going to be sent to this authorization here. So let me go ahead and just do that. So that's what the username here is. It's grabbing from the name on that form. And then we'll do the same thing here. Let pw equals request body.password. So that's from that other form field here, name equals password. And then I'm going to call this guy here, connect, which means that I can use these functions that were in connect.js. So this guy right here and this guy right here, cards connect and trader connect. This is going to be trader connect. And it's going to be attached to this constant. So here's what it looks like. Connect.trader connect. And then .query. So this is going to be kind of a long string. I'm not sure how much I want to break this up. I might just go ahead and try making the text here of the code a little bit smaller. But let's go ahead and basically, so you give it a couple of quotes here, and then you run your query right in here. I don't know if you remember, but that's how we did it with the PHP too. We did like, $SQL equals, and then a string that had our SQL query in it, and then we could send that SQL query off to the database, and it would run the query and give the results back. So same kind of thing here. So we're going to do select all from users. I believe that's the name of the table that I've got in there, and if not, then I will shortly. Where username equals, and here's something cool in here. We're able to use these question marks as wildcard, and then just give it an array for a second argument here on this query function, and it'll replace the items that we've got in that array, over these guys here, over these wildcard keys. So let's do this. Question mark and password equals, and I'm doing an MD5. I think I mentioned that in the last recording, but I can put a question mark inside of there as well. So let me go ahead and just, I think I can get these onto their own line. Yeah, so the query itself, the SQL query, is its first argument, and then the next argument is going to be that array, like this. So what that does is it takes this UN here, which we defined up here, and it replaces this question mark with it, replaces the second question mark with PW, which we defined up here. So I think that's kind of handy. That's kind of cool. And then let's see, what else do we need to do? We need to do a function, error, and results. There's a third possible parameter called fields. You can call it anything you want, but the results, I think, is the useful one. And this function, this is a first order function. Basically, it's a function being called within as an argument for another function, right? Or higher order function. And okay, so this is going to be the last bit here. Is the body of this function. If error, then throw error. That's about the easiest error throw script I've ever written, I've got to admit. PHP, it's whatever. It takes a lot more code than that to get done. Several lines. This is just very short and sweet to the point. And what I'm doing here is I'm testing to see if the results.length is greater than 0. So let me actually build out the structure here, as you know I like to do first. So results is the result of this query. So querying the database and testing, so like the user has put in this username and password, seeing how many results come back from the database from the users table that match those. And if the results is greater than 0, then that means we have a match. And if this is false, then the results.length is 0, and that means that what the user input does not match anything in the users table in the database. So that's basically this. That's the conditional that we're running here. And then we'll do request.session, right? We're doing the session storage here. Logged in, we'll set that to true, which means they'll be logged in. And we'll also do request session. We can set our own like username. I don't know what it just did, but okay. Username, UN. And we'll do response.redirect. Home. So if this matches an entry in the database, we'll set logged in equal to true, and we'll set username to UN, which is what they entered in there, and then we'll take us to the home page. So basically the whole point of a session is that you're carrying variables across multiple pages or across multiple files or what have you. And so now, as long as the user remains within this web app, doesn't log out or anything, they're going to be logged in and they can see different content from what people who are not logged in will be able to see. If this is not the case, then we'll do a request.session.loggedin equals false. Boo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another response.render. Remember on index.js we said, okay, so if you're on the home level or the root directory, then we're going to render this login page with this message. Well, you can do a render like that on any page here, as long as it's a JavaScript page. We'll do a response.render login. So if they fail to log in, it'll bring them right back to this login page. And we'll do message again equals and something else like incorrect login or something like that. So this is kind of a lot of messy tutorial because I'm jumping around from here and there, and I had to pause a couple of times because again, this is new stuff to me. I've never really used Express before. So when I come back for the next recording, I will have double checked the table in the database and made sure that I've got like a test user in there that I can test this out, and then we'll also do the register page so that we can allow new users to register username and password, and that it will reject the username and password if the username has already been taken. So that's what we'll do next.